Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we discuss about posture and its regulation. Posture and its regulation. What is posture? Posture is position adopted by an individual in his or her environment. Position adopted by an individual in his or her environment. Posture is actually active muscular resistance, active muscular resistance to displacement of the body by gravity or acceleration. So posture is actually active muscular resistance to displacement of the body by gravity or acceleration. Posture is maintained, regulated by certain sensory systems. So certain sensory systems are involved in the posture regulation. So what are these sensory systems which help to regulate the posture? Visual system, then vestibular apparatus, including the semicircular canals, uticle and saccule, then stretch receptors in the muscles and ligaments of joints in the neck. So stretch receptors in the muscles and ligaments of joints in the neck. Then stretch receptors in the muscles of the legs or limbs. Stretch receptors in the muscles of the limbs. And then pressure receptors in the sole of foot and in the surface of the body. So pressure receptors in the sole of the foot and external surface of the body. So these are the sensory systems which help in the regulation of posture. A number of reflexes are involved in the regulation of posture. A number of reflexes are involved in the regulation of posture. So these reflexes not only maintain an upright, balanced position. These reflexes not only maintain an upright and balanced position, but also provide a stable postural background, to carry out voluntary actions, but also maintain a postural background to carry out voluntary actions. Say, I want to play table tennis. So what is the posture required? Standing posture. Right? So these postural reflexes not only maintain an upright, balanced position, but also provide a stable postural background to carry out voluntary actions. Postural reflexes are of two types: static and dynamic. So two types of postural reflexes: static and dynamic. static and dynamic. Static postural reflexes maintain muscle contraction for long period. Static postural reflexes maintain muscle contraction for long period. And in dynamic postural reflexes, there is transient muscle contraction. So in dynamic postural reflexes, there is transient muscle contraction. So these postural reflexes are mainly influenced by the extracorticospinal system. So these postural reflexes are mainly influenced by the extracorticospinal or extrapyramidal system. These postural reflexes are integrated at various levels from the spinal cord to the cerebral cortex. So these postural reflexes are integrated by centers which are present at various levels from spinal cord to the cerebral cortex. These postural reflexes have been studied. These have been studied by giving sections in the central nervous system at various levels and then studying the effects produced. So these postural reflexes have been studied by giving sections at various levels in the central nervous system and then studying the effects produced. I discussed these sections and then their effects produced in the body. The first of these sections is decerebration. 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 Now in decerebration, a transverse section is given. A transverse section is given at mid-clavicular level in the midbrain. A transverse section is given at mid-clavicular level in the midbrain or at the upper border of the pons. Or at the upper border of the pons. And this procedure is called decerebration. Decerebration. And the effects produced is decerebrate rigidity. So the effect produced is decerebrate rigidity. Decerebrate rigidity. This is the effect produced when we give a transverse section at the mid-clavicular level or at the upper border of the pons. A medical scientist, Sherrington, he studied the animals after producing decerebration. And these animals were dogs and cats. So Sherrington produced decerebration in cats and dogs, and the effects produced were studied. Now in these animals, cats and dogs, what were the effects of decerebration? It was, of course, decerebrate rigidity. Say, this is the cat having decerebrate rigidity, and you see legs are hyper expanded. legs are hyperextended. Actually, there was increased muscle tone in the extensors of the animal. There was increased muscle tone in the extensors of the animal. So legs were hyperextended, back was hyperextended, back was hyperextended, head and tail were dorsiflexed. Head and tail were dorsiflexed. Head and tail were dorsiflexed. And jaw was tightly closed. Jaw was tightly closed. So these were the features of the decerebrate rigidity in the animals, say cat. And there was increase in the muscle tone in the extensors. Now in human beings, similar effects are present. So in humans having decerebrate rigidity, similar effects are present. You see? This is a man having decerebrate rigidity, and features are similar to those in the cat or dog. You see, legs and arms are extended. Legs and arms are extended. Head is dorsiflexed. Back is extended. Right? So legs and arms are extended. Back is extended. Head is dorsiflexed. And feet are plantar flexed. Feet are plantar flexed. Plantar flexed. Flexion at wrist, flexion at the wrist, flexion at the wrist. So these are features of decerebrate rigidity in human beings. So legs and arms are extended, back is extended, head is dorsiflexed, feet are plantar flexed, and there is flexion at the wrist. So these are the features in humans having decerebrate rigidity. So what is the mechanism of decerebrate rigidity when there is a transverse section at mid-cortical level or at the upper border of the pons? Now by this section, the inhibitory effect of cerebral cortex and basal ganglia on bulboreticular facilitatory area is removed. Inhibitory effect of cerebral cortex and basal ganglia on bulboreticular facilitatory area is removed. So no inhibition of the bulboreticular excitatory area by the cerebral cortex and basal ganglia in these animals or humans having decerebration. So what happens? There is overexcitability of the bulboreticular excitatory area, overexcitation. This results into increased discharge of impulses along reticulospinal tract to the gamma motor neurons. So increased discharge of impulses along the reticulospinal tract to the gamma efferent neurons in the spinal cord, resulting into increased gamma efferent discharge, So there is hyperactive or facilitated stretch reflex or myotatic reflex. So there is hyperactive or facilitated stretch reflex or myotatic reflex. I repeat, due to removal of the inhibitory effect of cerebral cortex and basal ganglia on bulboreticular excitatory area, there is overexcitation of bulboreticular excitatory area. There is increased discharge of impulses along the reticulospinal tract to the gamma efferent neurons in the spinal cord. There is increased gamma efferent discharge, right, resulting into hyperactive or facilitated stretch reflex, right, and this results into increased muscle tone, and that is the decerebrate rigidity. So in these animals, if we cut the gamma efferents, or if we cut the reticulospinal tract, rigidity disappears. So rigidity disappears if we cut the gamma efferent fibers, or if we cut the reticulospinal tract, the rigidity disappears. Now this type of decerebrate rigidity is called classical or mid-collicular decerebrate rigidity. Classical or mid-collicular. Classical or mid-collicular decerebrate rigidity. So this type of decerebrate rigidity produced by giving the transverse section at mid-collicular level is called the classical or mid-collicular decerebrate rigidity. And other type of rigidity is called ischemic decerebrate rigidity. Ischemic decerebrate rigidity. Ischemic decerebrate rigidity. How can we produce ischemic decerebrate rigidity? We ligate in animals internal carotid arteries. In animals, we ligate internal carotid arteries between pons and medulla. And this results into ischemic type of decerebrate rigidity. So if we ligate internal carotid arteries between pons and medulla oblongata, this results into ischemic type of decerebrate rigidity. Now in ischemic rigidity, the parts of the brain which become ischemic, are cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, and major part of the cerebellum. So by ligating internal carotid arteries to produce ischemic rigidity, the parts of the brain which become ischemic are cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, and major part of the cerebellum. Now in this ischemic decerebrate rigidity, in addition to cerebral cortex and basal ganglia, there is also involvement of cerebellum. also involvement of cerebellum. And this shows that cerebellum has a role in the control of muscle tone. This shows that cerebellum has a role in the control of the muscle tone. Ischemic decerebrate rigidity is due to increase in the alpha effect discharge. It is due to increase in the alpha effect discharge, not due to increase in the gamma effect discharge. Not due to increase in the gamma effect discharge. It is due to increase in the alpha effect discharge. Now in this animal, if this animal having ischemic decerebrity, which part of the nerve system have become ischemic? Cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, and major part of cerebellum. And rigidity is due to increase in the alpha effect discharge, not due to increase in the gamma effect discharge. Now, if in the animal having classical decerebrate rigidity, in animal having classical decerebrate rigidity, we cool down cerebellum. We cool down the cerebellum. The result will be ischemic type of decerebrate rigidity. So in an animal having classical decerebrate rigidity, if we cool down the cerebellum, the result will be ischemic type of decerebrate rigidity. In this animal, we warm up the cerebellum, again there will be classical decerebrate rigidity. We warm up the cerebellum, again there will be classical type of decerebrate rigidity. So keep in mind, there are two types of decerebrate rigidity, classical or mid-clavicular, and second type is ischemic. Classical rigidity is due to increase in the gamma effect discharge, so that the stretch reflex, the myostatic reflex become hyperactive, stimulated. In ischemic type, rigidity is not due to increase in the gamma effect discharge, but due to increase in the alpha effect discharge. And ischemic type, the parts which become ischemic are the cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, and the major part of the cerebellum. So this was about the decerebrate rigidity, its types, and about the decerebration, right? So next section we give is decortication. So after decerebration, now we are discussing about decortication. Decortication, resulting into decorticate rigidity. Resulting into decorticate rigidity. Now the section procedure is decortication, resulting into decorticate rigidity. Now in decorticate rigidity, there is lesion in the cerebral cortex. So damages to cerebral cortex. So damages to cerebral cortex. And this procedure is decortication. And the result is decorticate rigidity. Decorticate rigidity. So what are the features of the decorticate rigidity? So this is the human being having decorticate rigidity, having decorticate rigidity. So lesion is in the cerebral cortex. So lesion is in the cerebral cortex. The man is unconscious. The man is unconscious. The man is unconscious. And you see, in this man having decorticate rigidity, legs are extended, arms are moderately flexed. Arms are moderately flexed. You see, arms are moderately flexed and legs are extended. Now in this human, having decorticate rigidity, when head is rotated, say to right side, head is rotated to right side, head is turned to right side, on right side, arm becomes extended. On right side, the arm becomes extended. Similarly, when head is turned to the left side, the left arm is extended. So when you turn head to one side, on that side, the arm becomes extended, right? So in decorticate human being, the man is unconscious, legs are extended, arms are moderately flexed, and when head is turned to one side, on that side, the arm becomes extended. The arm becomes extended on that side to which head is turned. So these are the features of the decorticate rigidity. The next procedure or section which we can make to study postural reflexes is spinal animal. So next procedure or section which we make to study the postural reflexes is spinal animal. And we give section in the lower cervical region. So in animals, we give section in the lower cervical region, and the result will be the spinal animal. And we can study the reflexes having center in the spinal cord. We can study the reflexes having center in the spinal cord. So this was about the decerebrate, decorticate rigidity and spinal animal, and the procedure by which we have studied the postural reflexes. Now I start discussion on postural reflexes. Postural reflexes. Keep in mind that posture is maintained through variation in the muscle tone and muscle contraction. Posture is maintained through variation in the muscle tone and postural reflexes and muscle contraction. So posture is maintained through muscle tone variation and muscle contraction. Now first off, the postural reflexes is the stretch reflex or the myotatic reflex. Stretch reflex or the myotatic reflex, the reflex which maintains the muscle tone, which generates the muscle tone, is the stretch reflex or myotatic reflex. Which is the stimulus for stretch reflex? Stretch of the muscle. Stretch of the muscle. Which receptors are involved? Receptors are the muscle spindle. Receptors are the muscle spindle. And what is the response? Muscle contraction. Muscle contraction. So in the stretch reflex, the stimulus is stretch. Receptors are the muscle spindles. And the response is the muscle contraction. In the stretch reflex, the center is present in the spinal cord and medulla oblongata. So in stretch reflex, the center is present in the spinal cord and medulla oblongata. The next posterior reflex is positive sporting reaction. Positive sporting reaction. When sole of the foot or palm of the hand comes in contact with the surface, when sole of the foot or palm of the hand comes in contact with the surface, the limb becomes extended like rigid pillar. So when sole of the foot or palm of the hand comes in contact with the surface, the limb becomes extended like a rigid pillar. And this is to support the body. This is to support the body. This is to support the body. It is also called magnet reaction. Also called magnet reaction. So, sole of the foot or palm of the hand comes in contact with the surface, the limb becomes rigid like a pillar, become extended like a pillar. And this is to support the body. It is also called the magnet reaction. Which receptors are involved? Receptors are the pressure receptors. Receptors are the pressure receptors in the sole of the foot or palm of the hand, and proprioceptors in the flexors. Proprioceptors in the flexors of the limbs. So receptors are the pressure receptors in the sole of the foot or palm of the hand, and proprioceptors in the flexors of the limbs. The center of this reaction is in the spinal cord. The center is in the spinal cord. So this was positive sporting reaction. Next posterior reflex is negative sporting reaction. Negative sporting reaction. What is negative sporting reaction? There is relaxation which allows the limb to move to a new position. There is relaxation which allows the limb to be moved to a new position. So there is relaxation which allows the limb to be moved to a new position. I am standing. I want to move forward. I flex my leg passively and then I move to next position. This is the negative sporting reaction. This is initiated by passive flexion of the limb. It is initiated by passive flexion of the limb. I am standing. I want to move forward. So I am going to flex my leg and then I can move to next step, and this is with the help of the negative sporting reaction. Now in negative sporting reaction, receptors are the proprioceptors in the extensors of the limbs. So receptors are the proprioceptors in the extensors of the limbs. And center is in the spinal cord. So center for the positive sporting reaction and negative sporting reaction, the center is in the spinal cord. The center is in the spinal cord. So this was about the positive sporting reaction and negative sporting reaction. And we continue the posterior reflexes in the next lecture. We will continue about the posterior reflexes in the next lecture. Thank you.